Okay, first up the narrative, and you need to buckle up cause like Code Veronica kinda embraces full-on anime soap opera. So the story picks up in December 1998, exactly 3 months after the absolute show that was the Raccoon City incident. Claire Redfield is still looking for her brother Chris. Now any normal sane person would maybe hire a private investigator, but not Claire. Her grand plan is to single-handedly assault a fortified Umbrella Corporation facility in Paris. And the opening cinematic is just an over-the-top 90s action movie. Like first she's outrunning a helicopter minigun, then drops her gun, catches it in midair and takes out a squad of armed soldiers like she's John Wick's older sister. But she eventually gets captured by Umbrella security chief Rodrigo Juan Raval and is shipped off to Rockfort Island, a prison located in the middle of the Southern Ocean. Of course, because this is an RE game, Claire can't just sit in a cell. Like within just 5 minutes of her arriving, the island gets bombarded by some mysterious military force, the T-virus gets leaked everywhere, and the prison is overrun by the undead. Rodrigo, bleeding out and figuring they're all screwed anyway, lets Claire out of her cell. Now Claire has to navigate this nightmare island, and in doing so she runs into the game's 2 primary supporting characters. First up is Steve. So Steve is a young prisoner who was locked up because his dad, a former Umbrella employee, tried to sell corporate secrets which got Steve's mom killed and landed both of them in this hellhole. Look guys, I'm just gonna say it, Steve is one of the most annoying sidekicks in RE history. He's a combination of teenage angst, terrible voice acting, and unearned arrogance.
Shut up! I don't want to talk about it!
He constantly whines, runs off on his own, gets into trouble, and literally tries to kiss Claire while she's sleeping. Like, dude, what the f? Some people justify all this by saying his trauma makes his behavior understandable, but honestly, he's so bad that he's good kinda guy. Like his whole arc is about him developing an absurd fat crush on Claire over the span of like 12 hours, culminating in him declaring his love for her, which is just crazy to me. Anyways, then we have the main antagonist for the first half of the game, Alfred Ashford. Alfred is the commander of Rockfort Island and the heir to the Ashford family, one of Umbrella's founding families. And this guy Alfred is completely and irrevocably insane. He talks in this British accent and has a laugh that sounds like a dying dolphin. Look, you guys gotta listen to this.
Welcome, Claire!
Like it's actually so bad it crosses over into pure comedic genius. Anyways, Alfred spends his time shooting at Claire with a sniper rifle and ranting about how she ruined his island. But the greatest plot twist comes when you realize Alfred has a split personality. He literally dresses up in drag, puts on a wig, and pretends to be his twin sister Alexia. You catch him having conversations with himself in different voices like Norman Bates on steroids. It's unintentionally the funniest thing Capcom has ever written, and this all makes Code Veronica's overall voice acting basically so bad that it's good.
Wait a second. What just happened?
So there never was an Alexia after all.
You mean he thinks he's 2 people?
Anyways, the story doesn't stop at Rockfort Island. So about halfway through the game, Claire and Steve manage to hijack a plane, but Alfred hacks the autopilot and diverts them to another Umbrella facility located in Antarctica. And here the lore dumps get really heavy. Like we learn that the Ashford's father, Alexander, genetically engineered his children from the DNA of a genius ancestor named Veronica. Alexia turned out to be a child prodigy who developed the T. Veronica virus. And because she's a complete psychopath, she tested it on her own dad, turning him into a massive monster, and then injected herself going into a 15-year cryogenic sleep to let the virus perfectly bond with her body so she could become a god. So after Claire and Steve mortally injure Alfred, he wakes up Alexia. She immediately captures Claire and Steve using these huge telepathic plant tentacles, and things look incredibly grim. And just when you think Claire is done for, the perspective shifts. Chris Redfield finally shows up. Leon got an email from Claire earlier in the game. He tells Chris, and Chris climbs the cliffs of Rockfort Island looking for his sister. But he isn't the only familiar face. Albert Wesker, the traitorous STARS captain who supposedly died in the Spencer Mansion in the first game, is back. And not only is he alive, he's basically like Neo from the Matrix now. So Wesker was the one who bombed Rockfort Island and now has superhuman speed, strength, and glowing red eyes thanks to a prototype virus he injected himself with. The dynamic between Chris and Wesker is fantastic, setting up a rivalry that literally carries the franchise all the way to Resident Evil 5. So Chris follows Wesker and the Ashfords to Antarctica, leading to this explosive finale. He rescues Claire, but they're too late for Steve. Alexia injects Steve with the T-virus, turning the annoying teenager into an axe-wielding monster. So, in a genuinely tense sequence, you gotta run for your life as mutant Steve tries to chop Claire in half. But he eventually regains a shred of his humanity, saves Claire from Alexia's tentacles, and dies in her arms after saying he loves her. Chris then fights the fully mutated Alexia, blowing her away with an experimental weapon called the linear launcher before having a brutal fistfight with Wesker. The base explodes, Chris and Claire escape in a jet, and Wesker gets away with Steve's infected body. The story is an absolute roller coaster. Like, it's cheesy, it's melodramatic, and it takes itself way too seriously, but as a piece of classic RE lore, it's incredibly entertaining. And hearing the producer Yoshiaki talk at Summer Game Fest about how the remake will restructure the story to fit the modern, darker timeline, a part of me hopes they still keep the absurdity, because I think it gives Code Veronica its soul.
Let's finish this once and for all.
Okay, let's touch visuals and the art style real quick, because back in 2000 this game was a technical marvel. For the first time in the series, Capcom ditched pre-rendered backgrounds, which kinda like defined the PS1 era. And by utilizing the power of the Sega Dreamcast, the environments in Code Veronica were fully rendered in real-time 3D. However, you can actually see how this shift hurt the game visually, just a tiny bit. Because they couldn't rely on those hand-drawn detail of pre-rendered backgrounds, a lot of the environments now look a bit flat. Also, and this is a huge pet peeve of mine, they removed the gore on enemies. Like in the older games, if you blasted a zombie in the face with a shotgun, their head would explode like a watermelon, but now they just fall over completely intact. And also, like, while the camera was still largely fixed to give you that classic horror angle, it was now dynamic. It would pan, track, and swoop down corridors as you ran, giving the game a sense of scale and depth that the older games just couldn't match. It felt incredibly modern at the time, bridging the gap between the classic era and the RE4. The art direction also took a different turn. Instead of grimy urban streets and neon signs of Raccoon City, Code Veronica leans hard into European Gothic horror. Like, Rockfort Island is full of decaying brickwork and the Ashford Palace that looks like a haunted castle. Then you transition to freezing Antarctica before delving into a secret replica of the Spencer Mansion hidden under the ice. And yeah, also the enemy designs are pretty decent, especially the Bandersnatches, which are these lopsided abominations with one big stretchy arm that can grab you from across the room. They look horrible and sound even worse. Honestly, I can't wait to see the RE engine tackle these gothic environments for the remake, because the art direction itself is top tier. Alright, let's get into the gameplay mechanics, the reason you play an RE game. Just remember that this is classic survival horror at its most rigid. You navigate with tank controls, you manage a tiny inventory, you solve nonsensical puzzles that involve putting crystal eyeballs into tiger statues, and you save your game using limited ink ribbons at typewriters. It's slow and it requires you to think about every single bullet you fire. But instead of me boring you with explaining the whole combat, which is pretty much the same in any RE game, I'm just gonna look at some of the things that kinda stood out. Okay, so Code Veronica did try to innovate on the classic formula. The biggest new feature was dual-wielding guns. At certain points in the game, you can pick up a pair of submachine guns, or Steve's golden Lugers, allowing you to actually shoot two different enemies at the same time. It's incredibly satisfying and makes you feel way more powerful than you usually do in these games. You also get a bowgun, which can fire standard arrows or explosive bolts that are a godsend for the endgame bosses. Overall, the weapon variety is actually decent, like you got handguns, a shotgun, an assault rifle, a magnum, and a grenade launcher that fires acid, flame, and gas rounds. And then there's the combat knife. Holy shit, the knife in this game is an instrument of destruction. In literally every other classic RE game, the knife is kinda the last resort joke that you put in the item box immediately. But here it's the most OP weapon in your arsenal. And because of the way the game calculates hitboxes, a single swing of the knife can hit an enemy multiple times. Like if you aim and slash a zombie in the legs, it will instantly crumple to the ground. And once it's down, you just stand over it and furiously slash it, hitting it 3 or 4 times per swing, killing it before it can even try to get back up. Okay, moving on, I'm just gonna be brutally honest with you guys. This game is arguably the most punishing entry in the entire classic lineup. And no, it's not the enemies or the puzzles, it's that the game's actual design is built to trap you and force you to restart your save file if you make a mistake hours earlier. So let's start with a soft lock, specifically the fire extinguisher incident. Early in the game on Rockford Island, you find a fire extinguisher. You use it to put out a fire and grab a briefcase. The extinguisher is now empty. Every instinct in your gamer brain tells you to dump this useless empty item and forget about it forever. But if you don't manually carry that empty extinguisher to a universal item box and store it, you're kinda screwed. Cause like later when you get to Antarctica, there's a room on fire containing the Magnum. If you left the empty extinguisher on the island, you can't refill it, you can't put out the fire, and you permanently miss out on the most powerful gun in the game. And the game gives you absolutely zero warning about this. But for me, the peak of the game's cruelty is the plane tyrant. As Claire escapes the island in a cargo plane, a tyrant also gets in. The area is tiny, the tyrant can kill you in 2 or 3 hits, and the only way to kill it is to shoot it enough to make it bleed and then hitting a control panel to launch a crate to knock it out the back door. But like if you get in this plane and don't have enough explosive or acid rounds, it's so difficult to win. The tyrant will just catch the crate and push it back at you, killing you instantly. I mean, it's just a brutal choke point. And if you survive that, the game rewards you in Antarctica with the Moth Hallway, and oh my god, the Moth Hallway. It's a long corridor leading to a save room and it's infested with these mutated moths. And they constantly respawn every single time you enter the room and poison you. The devs did put blue herbs at the end of the hall so you can cure the poison, but the moment you cure yourself and try to walk back through the hall to leave, the respawning moths just poison you again. It's an exercise in pure frustration that makes you want to throw your controller at the wall. Finally, I gotta mention the boss fight against Mutant Steve. It's not even a fight, it's a panic attack. Steve turns into a giant monster with an axe that covers half the room. You can't kill him, you just have to immediately turn around and run in a circle while he chases you. His reach is so absurd that he's almost guaranteed to hit you at least twice, so if you go into that room without 2 full healing items, you're dead. The difficulty in this game is something else, and I'm genuinely praying that the remake overhauls these encounters because I really don't want to go through all this misery again. So after looking back at the lore, the visuals, the broken knife, and the sadistic difficulty, what's the final verdict on Code Veronica? Honestly, it's a brilliantly flawed but a beautiful nightmare. It's the absolute peak of the classic tank control era. But the atmosphere is thick, the gothic art design is incredible, and the story is so wildly unhinged and dramatic that it's impossible not to be entertained by it. And it also cemented Claire as a tough and a capable protagonist. And I think it's a relic of a time when devs actively wanted you to buy a strategy guide to figure out how to beat their game. And with Capcom officially launching the Resident Evil Veronica remake in 2027, I'm actually really excited to see them tackle Rockford Island, fix the agonizing difficulty spikes, and finally give Claire's nightmare the modern polish it deserves. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments if you ever played this back in the day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.